If you're a software developer, irrespective of which language you use to build application, this video is important. In this video, I will not teach you how to write code. In this video, I will teach you how not to write a code.
What?
And the topic for this video is code smell. So welcome back, aliens. My name is Arvind Reddy and let's talk about code smell. That's right, your code sometimes smells. In fact, most of the time. The thing is, if you're a software developer or if you're learning a programming language, you might have seen some programming memes by saying, if your code is working, don't touch. Because what happens is when you write a code to make things work, and if you make small change, you will get tons of errors. So we basically follow this technique where if it is working, don't touch it. So as a developer, what we do is we get a requirement and then we try to convert that requirement into a software which will solve a problem, right? So if that software is solving a problem, our job is done. We are so happy. We just go home and we party. But here's the thing. The software which you build is not only for one time. Of course, if there's a specific requirement that this is a requirement, this is the software we need, your job is done. But that's not the case every time, right? Because your client will change requirement often. And maybe you want to add some new features to it. Now, with the moment you say you want to add a new feature, of course, you will look at your code and by saying, okay, this is a code I've written and now I want to update and it should be easy. Not exactly. In the software industry or as a programmer, we always have this, right? The moment you write a code, you and God understands what you're writing. But after 1 week, only God knows what you have written. In fact, you don't understand your own code. So that's why it's important to write a code which is actually readable. And by default, when you write application, you just want to make it work. And in your code, you'll be having a lot of code smells. Now, what is code smell basically? Now with this smell, don't get confused with the bugs. Now, basically, when you write application, of course, you'll be having errors, you'll be having bugs. And that's how we spend most of our time, right? We say we are debugging. So basically, you code for 1 hour and you debug for 5 to 6 hours, right? The thing is, bugs, actually you can see them, right? It's not working. You're not getting the proper output. Or maybe you're trying to place an order and the order is not getting placed. Those are bugs basically. Now in terms of smell, in this scenario, your code actually works. It is doing everything which you want it to do. Everything is working fine. The problem starts when someone is trying to look at your code and it's not readable. Maybe you're writing a lot of spaghetti code, interdependent codes. So in this video, let's talk about those things, those smells which should not be there in the code, which will make your code more readable, more maintainable, and a shorter code. So let's talk about code smells. Actually, this term got famous because of Kent Beck and later on by Martin Fowler in a book called Refactoring. That's right. We do a lot of code refactoring after we build the project, right? Now, in this code refactoring, we are not actually changing the logic. Everything is done. We are just changing the way your code looks, right? Because sometimes you write a very lengthy code just to achieve simple thing. So how about making that code shorter? And this is one of the code smell we have, a longer code. But then we have more smell codes, which I want to describe it now. In fact, I have written down in my notepad here. So let me read out one by one. And maybe somewhere I can give you some solution. What is the alternative for that? Or there's something which you can avoid when writing a code. So the first one is mysterious names. And we all are criminal in this case. And we all have done that, right? So basically, even when you learn a programming language, in fact, when I teach a programming language, we have this tendency of using weird variable names like A, B, C, or maybe X, Y, Z, or maybe show something. So we write method names or function names or class name, variable names in a very weird way. So your class name, variable name should be something like, if you read that variable name, it should explain what it's doing, why we have created that particular variable. The second one is duplicate code. That's right. So what we do is, sometimes we have this tendency of writing the same code in multiple classes or multiple functions. Don't do that, right? Because I always believe repeating code or duplicating code is actually a crime and we all are criminals. I don't know from where I got this line, but yeah. So we all are criminals in the world of programming the moment you write duplicate code. Now, one of the solutions can be if you have two classes with the same definitions, maybe create a superclass of it and you can have two subclasses which will copy the code from, or which will inherit the code from the base class. Next is complicated code. And trust me, I have this habit of learning multiple languages, and sometimes when I look at some of the projects in other languages, it is actually hard to read that code. Maybe you have to refer documentation, and you will say that's what's a bad part, right? We actually build documentation to understand the code. I would say documentation should be a supplement for your code. Your code should itself explain what it's doing. So if you use proper names and a proper flow. Now here's the next one. And let me know if it has happened to you in the comment section. The moment you change one thing in one class or one function, it affects other classes and functions. And then you start debugging the other classes and functions. Don't do that. So make sure that you create a software which is loosely coupled. So one object or one instance or one function should not be dependent on the other function. Try to make it modular, and then yes, if you can call it, that's fine, but then don't make it dependent. Of course, there are some use cases where you have to make it dependent. Try to avoid that if it is possible. And the next one is quite confusing because a lot of people believe that variables are meant to be changed. But there are some variables which don't need to be changed. Example, if you create a variable which to hold data which is not getting changed, make it final, make it constant, right? So try to avoid variable mutation, because you never know, the variable which you have created is getting changed somewhere in the code and you don't even know what is happening, right? The next one is done by everyone when you learn a programming language. So if you get a problem statement, you write everything in one function. So you create a function or a method and you write everything there. And then to understand what that method is doing or function is doing, you actually scroll, right? Of course, you have this specific resolution on your screen and then you can't see everything, right? Maybe you need a vertical monitor to read everything, but don't do that. If you think that you have a function which has a lot of lines of code, try to divide the task. Maybe one function is doing multiple things. Maybe you can divide into multiple functions and maybe you can call them, right? So one function should do only single unit of work. It will be easier for you to change that function in future, and most importantly, you don't have to scroll. The same thing is applied for the classes as well. If you create a class, don't write a class where you have to scroll multiple times to see the entire class. And what about the line? I have seen some languages, in fact, when I was writing code for Spring and Hibernate, in Hibernate, just to define the session, if you don't know about Hibernate, ignore that. But then sometimes you write a huge line, right? A statement where you don't scroll vertically, you scroll horizontally to see the statement, right? So avoid that. If you can also line up, if you see that you have a bigger statement, just try to write a new line, maybe dot and new line. That should work. Okay. Now we mentioned, right? Classes should be small. You should not write everything in one class. Don't overload it. In the same way, don't make your class as a freeloader. Don't just create a class which is doing only one thing or 2 or 3 lines. Try to avoid it. Of course, there are some situations where the class will only have variables. For a state, we call them as data carrying classes. If that's a case, that should work. But if you think, hey, this is a class which only has a small set of statements, try to merge that in another class. Okay, that should also work. So don't make it overloaded and don't also make it freeloader. Just a class is there, because if you have extra classes, you have to add extra documentation, you will have to create multiple APIs, so just avoid it. And there is something, of course, every beginners do, which is hard coding the values. So example, if you want to assign values, maybe you want to iterate using a loop, and sometimes you assign the exact value in the loop itself, or maybe you're passing the exact value to a function. Why don't you save that in a variable? The advantage would be, if you use that value multiple times, you're just using a single variable. And if you want to change a value, just change once. So instead of using hard-coded values. So try to avoid hard-coded values. If statement loops are very important, but just because it is free to use, don't use it everywhere. The moment you have loops and if statements multiple times, if it is not needed, try to remove them, try to avoid, maybe merge a multiple loops in one. So that you will at least know what is happening. When you have multiple loops, maybe you're slowing down your system, maybe you're slowing down the performance as well, and stop the loop when it is required. Example, let's say if you want to check a given number is prime or not, you can check for the entire range. And I hope you know how do we find prime, right? Or you can go till the square root. So at that point, you basically are reducing the number of iterations you're doing there. These are just some code smell which I mentioned. There are multiple. In fact, you can read a book on that. You can go to Google and search for Robert Martin or maybe Uncle Bob, and you can see a lot of videos and documentation from him to understand code smell. Now, question arises, if you have already written a project, how do you find a code smell? There are multiple ways. Of course, the first one is manually going through each line and removing the code smell. Basically, you are doing refactoring of a code. Or, because see, as a human, you might miss some, right? What if you can use automated tools? There are multiple tools available, which is automated. They will check your code smell. Just run the tool. It will give you all the stats where exactly you have a code smell. And maybe you can set the priority. Okay, this is very important for me to refactor. Hey, we can avoid that. That's your choice. See, ultimately, you want to be an efficient software developer, not just a developer. So yeah, so next time when you write a code or when you build an application, think about code smell and don't just think about bugs and errors. Of course, those are important, but also try to make your code look clean. So that's it from this video. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know in the comment section and do subscribe for further videos. Bye-bye.